So if you follow me over on Instagram, I posted a picture of this book, and I said it strongly reminded me of Pride and Prejudice. And what drew me to read this book, I thought that the cover was flirty and cute, and that's unusual for me to pick one that's not got a cowboy on the front. Anyway, let's read this special edition, which enhances life, love, and family from Harlequin. It's the McBains of Grace Harbor, a legacy of love at the water's edge. Ian and Amanda McBain didn't raise a fool. Their daughter Katie, spelt C-A-D-Y, could spot a player a mile away, and Damon Hurst was a textbook player. What the hell was a celebrity chef doing in Grace Harbor anyway? True, he was trying to save the family business, but helping her family didn't give him carte blanche to Katie. She heard the rumors, the parade of Pop-Tarts, the raunchy parties. She wouldn't be another notch on his cutting board. Damon was no stranger to women, but his fiery, caramel-eyed tomboy was unlike anyone he'd ever met. The chef might be accustomed to having his own way, but this time, could he have bitten off more than he could chew? Well, let's read what the inside says. You know how this goes. I'm going to read you the little preface, which wets your whistle to want you to read the book. Here we go. "No, close your eyes," he ordered. Katie bristled. "Who do you think?" "Just do it." And as she found herself obeying as much out of surprise as anything, her heart stuttered in her chest. He was right in front of her, and she could feel him sense the heat from his body. "Open your mouth." Pulse was jittery. She did. "Tell me what you think of this," he murmured. His fingers were hard and warm against her lips and cheek. Then she stilled, because he slipped a tidbit of something into her mouth, and it smelled incredible and tasted even better. She bit down, and an exquisite flavor burst through her mouth. She wanted more. She couldn't prevent a humming moan of pleasure. "I take it that means you approve." Her eyes flew open to see Damon standing there, intent. He watched her with eyes of a man who just pleasured a woman, not with just taste, but with touch. Oh, now if that doesn't wet your whistle to want to read this book, I don't know what would. Anyway, dear reader, my name is Kristin. I'm a cookaholic. I used to think I could quit any time I want, but now I have to admit, I'm obsessed. Maybe I should blame my mother, who let me watch the Galloping Gourmet reruns when I was homesick as a kid, or my high school teacher, who introduced me to Julia Child. At any rate, it was only a matter of time before I wrote a book about a chef, which, of course, required me to finagle my way into a 5-star restaurant kitchen, purely for research purposes, of course. Several months and several $100s worth of cooking gear later, Japanese turning mandolin, tambale molds, immersion circulator, this book was born. I'd love to hear what you think of Katie and Damon and the rest of the McBains, so drop me a line at Kristin@KristinHardy.com. And don't forget to watch the stories of Max Walker Tucker coming soon. In the meantime, stop by for Kristin Hardy for news, recipes, contents, or to sign up for the newsletter informing readers of new releases. Enjoy Kristin Hardy. Okay. And we're going to skip ahead here to the acknowledgments dedication before we start hitting the paper clips. If you can't tell, this is going to be a highly rated book, and I'm actually going to make note to look for the other books in this series because I loved this book. Okay. Acknowledgments. Thanks go to Chef Jonathan Cartwright and his staff at the White Barn Inn for giving me a window into their world, to Eric Lusty at the Dockside Guest Quarters for taking me behind the scenes, and Joe DeSalziar, the food blogger extraordinaire, www.blog.foodiincorporated.com, for the ramps. Dedication goes to Shannon for the dreams, to Teresa for everything, to Gail and Charles, may he live forever, for not hunting me down and strangling me, and of course to Stephen, who understands the true secret ingredient. We go to the first circle, which ironically I did not have a paper clip. Okay. She followed her parents out to the parking lot. Since she'd been a child, the two constants in her life had been the inn and her parents' quiet love for each other. For an instant she'd tug of a wistfulness. She had always assumed that someday she'd find a love, at least until she hit high school and discovered what guys wanted were curvy blonde cheerleader types with the Pepsodent smiles, not opinionated, auburn-haired tomboys. Well, she was who she was, for better or for worse. The day she'd given up looking for romance with a good-looking charmer had been that day. She finally started to get comfortable in her own skin, and at 27 she wasn't about to change for anyone. Okay, next paperclip. Page 16 and 17. Welcome to Compass Rose guest quarters, Mr. Katie. Or Mr. Start over, Donna. Welcome to the Compass Rose guest quarters, Mr. Katie stopped, stared at him blankly. Damon Hirst, she repeated. The Damon Hirst? The same. She saw it now, the famous cheekbones, the Renaissance hair, and that famous face that grazed 100 magazine covers, and 1,000 tabloid stories over his half-decade of infamy. Damon Hirst, the infant terrible of the cooking channel, the charismatic star who sent the upstart network soaring against its entrenched rival before he flamed out over the year before. Known more for his baroque personal life and volatile kitchen persona than for his undeniably brilliant cuisine, he'd been the subject of speculation, rumor, spite, and stories, and outrageous to be believed. Except that they were. Katie cleared her throat. Yes, well, welcome to the Compass Rose, Mr. Hirsch, she said. It'll take a little time to get your room put together for you, but we do have a vacancy. If you'll just fill out the registration form, please. She put the paper on the little counter at top the lower half of the door. I'm not checking in. Katie frowned. I'm not sure I understand. The restaurant. Ah, I see. She hadn't realized that the sexton at the Compass Rose restaurant had a reputation that stretched all the way to Manhattan. Then again, with his shows very publicly cancelled and his restaurant doors shuttered, maybe Damon Hirst had very little to do than run around obscure eateries in Maine. She dredged up a faint smile. The sexton is across the parking lot. I believe that they're still serving lunch. I'm not here for lunch either, he said. He was laughing at her. She realized, and she felt her face flame. If you're hoping for a tour of the restaurant, I think you're out of luck. Even she could hear her tartness in her voice. We're short-handed, and I doubt sous chef has any interest in letting you go traipsing around his kitchen. It's my kitchen now, Hearst corrected. I guess you haven't heard. I'm the new chef. And this is where our two characters meet. Page 27. I circled it. Let's see here. You know how long it's been, Katie took a drink of her Coke, since Ed Shaw? Tanya stared. Ed Shaw, what was that, like 3 years ago, Katie, sweetie? You've got to get out more. Maybe I don't want to, she retorted. I mean, it's fine for you. You're gorgeous. You always have got guys after you. It doesn't work that way for me. That's because you scare 'em off with that mouth of yours. Maybe I want to scare 'em off. Maybe I just don't want to deal with it. She just didn't want the nerves. She didn't want the anticipation, despised the feeling of having it suddenly matter whether or not some guy called, and having no control of whether he did or not. Somewhere along the line it just became easier and more comfortable, less nerve-wracking to avoid all the guys together. So we move on. That was her best friend, Tanya. Okay, page 32. She definitely an original. Nice enough looking, he supposed, though you'd hardly know she was aware of it. He was used to women who flirted, women who were experts at polishing their own allure. He wasn't sure he could remember even meeting a woman who purely didn't give a damn about making a good impression, on him or anyone else. As annoying as it was, he had to give her credit. Her redhead skin might look milky soothed, but that tough, compact body to go with that head to toe, or toe to toe with anyone. He remembered her scent and smile. Going toe to with her could be kind of intriguing. The phone rang, and he picked it up absently. Hearst, 7 o'clock. And already at work, Paul Decour said in lightly English. I'm happy to see it. That makes one of us, Damon said, stifling a yawn. You can sleep when you're dead, my friend. You cannot build a world-class restaurant from the grave. Now there's a sprightly thought for you to start the day. Was that the only reason you called, to cheer me up? Oh, I called to see how your new venture is going. Oh, great, I'm learning how to make meals without fresh produce. How's he handling it? Gotta read the book. Page 45. The Green Market in Manhattan had ramps and asparagus and squash and blossoms last week. And it's 4 temperature zones away from us, she defended. This is Maine. We have snow until April. We grow what we can. If you want more of a choice, feel free to drive down to Boston. In fact, feel free to keep going. He studied her. You don't want me here, do you? Katie opened her mouth and closed it. It's not a matter of what I want. It's a matter of my parents' business, and they think that you're right guy for the job. You're evading the question. Okay, how about this? I've seen the headlines. I know the style. You don't fit here. He smiled. You don't believe in self-peddling things, do you? Why waste time? And you think you know all about me. Given all the press you've generated, it's kind of hard not to. Now who's wasting time, he countered. Half of those stories are exaggerations, the other half outright lies. She folded her arms. So what, you didn't throw those people out of the restaurant? Okay, I might have asked 1 or 2 of them to leave early on, he admitted. You got a restaurant, you know how they can be. In fact, I'd be shocked if you've never thrown someone out. The customer is always right, she reminded him, not bothering to add that she never had that choice. We move on to the next paperclip. Page 55. The food, did you like it? Oh, by sheer force of will, she dragged herself out of the sensory overload and stepped away from her own sanity. Good, yeah. Good doesn't begin to cover it. What was that? Judging by that way, you just now something that belongs on the menu. It's an appetizer, he elaborated. A croissant. Squab foie gras, moral umusulin in bec d'eau. You're talking to someone who eats pizza and macaroni and cheese. Translate. Pigeon, duck liver, mushroom, and sauce and pastry. Her brows creased. I think I liked it better when I didn't know. Sorry, I'm fresh out of cheese Danish. Too bad. I'm just not much for fancy food. Oh, yeah? He leaned against the counter. For you not being so much for fancy food, you seem pretty into it. Maybe you should spend less time worrying about what you don't want to like and just go ahead and like it. Getting spicy between these two. We're going to move forward. Page 97. Damon rested his hands on the door. You know, I barely got today figured out, and I don't know about tomorrow any more than you do. But I do know that you don't find this just anywhere. When you find a gift, you don't just walk away from it. So take your time and figure things out. I'll be here. He brushed a kiss over her lips and stood there watching her as she drove off into the night. Page 104. He needed her to come with him willingly. He needed her trust. He knew he'd changed. He knew he was different than what he'd been a decade or even a few years before. But somehow he needed her to believe. I don't know what to think of you, she said in some strange way, as if though he'd convinced her, as if proof that change was real. He pulled in through the trees at the campus rows and parked behind the restaurant to unload lettuce ramps, fiddleheads, and some hothouse tomatoes and herbs. Roman would arrive soon, and they'd get to work, Damon thought as he carried the produce boxes inside. Now that the menu was completely covered, they were plenty to do, and it was making a difference. Business was picking up, and he made a few calls to put out the quiet word to the food writers he knew. Now all he could do was sit back, make the best food he knew how to do, and make and wait. It was becoming a theme in his life. Then he heard a knock on the door and turned to see Katie stepping inside, a tray of greens in her hand. And the waiting stopped. Okay, page 107. What, it sounded like a date. She took an unsteady breath. It's your weekend. Are you sure you want to cook? Are you sure you want a garden? I love the banter. It was an out. She recognized it, but she didn't take it. She spent the week thinking about him, about them. And she hadn't come up with any answers. In agreeing to help, though, she realized that she knew all along what she wanted to do. Yeah, You helped us move some furniture. This is a payback. Anyway, it'll keep me out of trouble. Are you sure of that? He studied her. What, you don't think I can take you down? She lightly. Be my guest. It wasn't said in a tone of a schoolyard taunt. He meant it. She flushed. Okay, we're on for Sunday, he said, letting her off the hook. I can get you directions later in the week. Good, she nodded, turned to leave, but he caught her wrist to stop her. Katie froze. I should go. I never really thanked you for the microgreens, he said softly. Her heart began to thump harder. Oh, well, it's not big deal. It was just to help out the restaurant, or my parents. It was hard to think when the heat of his fingers was spreading up her arm. And we'll leave you with that little morsel of goodness. Page 118. Is this the part where you start cracking your knuckles and telling me that I better not mess with your sister? This is Katie's sister. Talking to, I'll get the name right, Damon. I hope you know enough about my sister by now to know that she's perfectly capable of cracking her own knuckles. I'll just say she deserves you to be straight, and she deserves you the best you can give her. I know that about her by now, and pretty sure of all that too. Well then, Max tipped her head. It appears we're in agreement. Across the room, Katie approached. What are you two looking so serious about? She asked, sliding into her chair. Max locked eyes with Damon and smiled. Hot tomatoes, she said. We're talking about hot tomatoes. Page 118, that was. Moving on. Page 139. So why did you get into landscaping? Katie's into landscaping. Damon asked, finishing the corn and picking a packet of rosemary. Katie sat on the back of her heels, swiped a strand of hair back with her arm. Plants are easy. They don't pitch fits on you, and they don't need to be catered to. Aren't you supposed to talk to them? Yeah, but they don't go on and on, expect you to be interested, and they don't tend to show up 4 hours early for check-in. She watched him sprinkle the seeds into the earthen groove and reached over to help cover them. Anyway, I always liked being outdoors. It used to drive me crazy being stuck inside a summer, cleaning rooms or making breakfast or being nice to guests. Yeah, that being the nice part, I just hate it. She shot him a look. Do you want to hear, or do you just want to mock me? I do want to hear. However, mocking you does have its charms. She swatted him. Anyway, the only break was helping my dad outside when he did the handyman stuff around the place or worked on the ground. So I started volunteering. The better I got at it, the more I got to do. At some point, I realized I had a kind of knack for it, and my parents realized it was a good way to keep guests from demanding their money back. We move on. Page 146. Amanda hesitated. Are you having an affair with Damon Hurst? This is mom and daughter now talking. The answer, she was sure, was all over her face, but she nodded. Yes. The whole time? No, it's pretty recent, sudden. I wasn't expecting it, but She took a deep breath. This is kind of strange conversation to have with your mother. It's kind of strange conversation to be having with your daughter, Amanda returned. Then why are we having it? Amanda closed her eyes and shook her head. Do you remember a month ago when we were standing in the kitchen and you were telling your father and I what a mess Damon Hurst had made of his personal life? And I remember you telling me that he'd changed. Enough to run our restaurant, not enough that I want my daughter sleeping with him. Mom, Katie said, her eyes steadily, I know I said those things, and I believed them at the time. I don't anymore. He's been here, 6 weeks? And I've watched him. I've spent time with him. He's not the person that they talk about. They all can't be stories. No, they can't. But didn't you tell me that once that people grow up? And I believe he has. She paused. I believe in him. Amanda let out a long breath. I'm sorry, I know you're an adult, and I know it's not my business, but I seem to remember you telling me that you couldn't help but worry about your father and me. Her eyes softened. I can't help worry about you. You're my daughter, and I want to make sure that you're happy. I just don't know that he's the person who can make you that way. Didn't you used to tell me that I was the only one who could make my own self happy? And are you? Katie looked at her mother. I think I might be. You always kept yourself closed off from almost everyone and everybody. Amanda blinked a few times. It's not good for you. You need someone to bring you out of yourself. I don't know. Maybe Damon can do that. You've been different the last couple of weeks. I noticed it, and I just don't think it. I didn't want to think to wonder why. Maybe I should have asked. We would have just had this conversation earlier. What a usually diplomatic way for you to tell me it's none of my business, Amanda said with a watery laugh. Maybe he's a good influence on you after all. We'll find out, Katie said. We'll find out. That was page 148. We're getting down, folks. Only 4 paper clips to go. Page 180. Then again, so much has changed about her life period. When she walked these rows with Damon, she never had guessed that she'd wind up even talking to him voluntarily, let alone having an affair with him. And then she never in a million years would have dreamed that she should go fall in love with him. The Katie that she'd been would have not so diplomatically suggested that she had her head examined. The Katie of today wasn't so sure that that wasn't a bad idea. It would be okay, she told herself, as her stomach jittered. No falling in love with him would not have been her choice, but it wasn't as though she could tell herself not to feel. After all, she already tried that for all the good it had done her. At her heart, Katie was a realist, and her heart, it seemed, would do as it would. Page 195. Katie, whatever else is going on, this thing between us is not important to me. I don't want to lose it. I want to find a way to make it work. Are you out of your mind? There is no us. You're walking out on my parents. You're walking out on me. Are you... you think... You're walking out on me. Okay, temper flashed in his eyes. I'm not walking out. You think for 1 minute that you're not going to be coming back out after you go out there? You're lying to yourself. Vegas, the casino, the non-stop party people, she flared. It's all right up your alley. And it hurt. Oh, did it hurt. So we're back to that again. All the stories. Haven't you seen anything while I've been here? Don't you know me? That's not my life anymore. And this, who were you trying to kid? This was never your thing. Grace Harbor was never your kind of thing. It was just a convenient fill-in so you could keep your chops sharp, and I suppose I was too. I'm such an idiot. Her voice rose. I knew from the beginning that you were like... I knew it, and I still got suckered. And it cut deep, slicing her to the bone. She had let him in. She trusted. She'd given up that last bit of distance and that last bit of protection. And she'd given up her heart. You were never a fill-in, he shot back. You matter. This matters. She couldn't let herself listen. If it matters, then why are you leaving? That's page 195. Okay. Page 199. He didn't know what was worse. Having Katie tell him to take a hike, or realizing that she never really known him at all. That she never really even trusted him. That the world he thought they had built between them was nothing. In a way, she made the decision easier. Once she'd taken herself out of the picture, the choice was simple. There was really nothing to lose. The sextant was strictly a short-term assignment, and had been from the beginning. Certainly Ian McBain had shown little surprise at the news. We had you longer than we expected, to be honest, he said. There had been something in Amanda McBain's eyes as she looked at him, made Damon suspect that she knew about him and Katie. When she told him he didn't need to worry about the notice, he was certain of it. And Katie, it had been a hell of a way to say goodbye. But maybe there was no any good way. And maybe there was right, and maybe she was right. Maybe it was an impossible situation from the start. But what was he supposed to do? Throw away a career? Jettison everything he'd worked for just to stay in Grace Harbor? Work at the Sextant live on a small stage? It wasn't possible, and she should have known it. And it hadn't had to be the end of them. They could have kept things going with him flying and her coming to Vegas. They could have found a way, if she was willing to try. If she was willing to trust him. But she wasn't. And that hurt most of all. And so he sat in the business class, drinking scotch, watching the clouds pass below, and wishing he knew where the hell he was. And that's page 200. Last paperclip. Her friend points out some shortcomings in the conversation, the final conversation, between Damon and Katie as we know it so far. He's taken off to Vegas to reclaim his throne, if you will, to be a high-powered chef, and she's going to let him. After all, did they ever have that conversation about would he take her? Think on that. Now, we're going to pick up that with her friend Tanya having a conversation with her. Katie gave a humorous laugh. Oh, right, me in Vegas? I can just see it now. Fancy parties, VIP lounges, all-night gambling, sequin dresses, and high heels. Sounds like my kind of life. Would you have gone? My life is here, Tanya. You know that, she returned impatiently. This patch of coast, my family, my job, my friends, my history, everything. This is what I'm about. Would you have gone? Tanya asked again. Katie looked out at the water, staring at the horizon for the longest moments, watching a ship for the compass. If he'd asked me, she said softly, I would have gone anywhere with him. I'm going to let you wonder, did Katie and Damon get together, or did they go their separate ways? This book gets a 20. Now, to find out why, you got to read it. But it's an outstanding book. I give it high marks for high reasons. Miscommunication happens in all forms. The moment we decide to shut down and not listen to our partner, then that's when the problems start. That's when the walls go up and there's no more relationship. One person can bend over backwards to try to make a relationship work. But that doesn't make it work. It takes two people who are willing to give, who's willing to listen, who's willing to talk things out rather than run or go to a better job and actually make things work. So, like I said, the book gets a 20 for a reason. You got to read it. And I'm going to make sure that I make note of these other books that this author has written, because I want to know what happened to all of the others. Don't you? Okay, so this will be it on the book reviews, my videos for tonight, because I've got to go get a workout in. I'm moving up to 5 pounds, and I'm doing it tonight. 5-pound weights on the guns. I can't wait. Anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully. It's been fun doing these book reviews. It's been too long. Love it. And love y'all. Night.